resource that I absolutely love. And this one is called Frictionless by Nelson Rodriguez. And it's specifically about video games and the whole experience from development to building your community and even launching. And basically, what I like about this book is it's all right. So while it goes through those processes, developing your game, designing, but it's at a very, very high level and strictly only uses the lens of what can you do to make every aspect of development and marketing frictionless. So it's not like a how-to book. It doesn't say, okay, for development do this, for marketing, this is how you should build your community. Like it's not like anything like that. But what it does is outlines those processes, what's involved, how they're important, but always applying the lens of what to do to be frictionless. And what I mean by that specifically, let's say from the development perspective, you're doing an early build of your game. Let's say it's an alpha, beta, whatever the case may be. It addresses the ways of, hey, look, you're creating friction in your game by basically, let's say, this is why play testers are so important, right? Because you're identifying areas in which players might have difficulty with the games, identifying bugs, things like that. Those are all points of friction. So he goes into great detail about what are certain ways you can reduce that friction. And that's just a tiny little piece of it. There's other aspects of it too that go into detail, like maybe you can incorporate something into your game, let's say through a demo, that players can provide direct feedback in the game, or any number of different ways. So, and he takes this simple focus of doing everything that you're doing and making it frictionless, and he applies it to every aspect of development and marketing. And again, kind of what we were talking about before, it comes down to really that value aspect. And that's really what, Rodriguez is saying here is like, if you're not providing that value or that positive experience from the game all the way down to your marketing, well then, and it's not to say you're making a low effort or not taking the initiative or time to make it that way, because sometimes it's a learning process, right? To understand that. But what it does do is identify those areas where you might have missed or not thought about, and really apply that lens of, how do I make this as frictionless as possible from the whole entire experience? Basically providing the best experience possible. And that's why I highly recommend this book too, because it really goes into the whole entire process and looking at things from that lens. Because let's face it, we can get tunnel vision and everything else. So just drill down into what we're working on, where it's really hard and easy to kind of miss those points. And you don't want to do that. Again, like I said before, with people who do this all the time, it's not that they're doing it intentionally. It's just they have pure intentions, or they might not realize what they're doing before it could be too late or not. So again, great book to read. I think any dev out there should read this. Does a great job. Okay, I'm done talking about that one. So from there then, like, to kind of, I guess, wrap things up. I mean, we talked again about the SMART goals and the measurability of things and like attainability and time bound. What's a good thing that we can take from all this to kind of summarize or with, like, you mentioned all this stuff, but what are the things that really keep you on track? That's what I want to kind of wrap up with, like, because we talked a lot about, like, what are good things to do, how you can learn from them, but what are the things, like the processes and stuff that really help keep you on track? So you never, like, necessarily, because if you find yourself, if you're not really doing some of these things right, and you stray off, you could find out, like, oh wow, I'm way off, right? So what are the things that keep us from getting way off base?
That's a tough question, as someone who frequently goes way off base.
Yeah, I mean, keep going.
So I guess, like, can you give me an example of, like, what you had in mind?
Yeah, so I guess here I'll be even more specific. what habits do you have in place that can help you, stay on base and not stray too far off the path?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, one thing that really helps me is, and I don't know if this is necessarily the best habit, so I say take this with a grain of salt, but
Okay.
uh, I really like to make promises on my deliverables, even if no
Okay.
one's asking for them. Like I'll shoot a message over to a friend and say, "Hey, like this is the video I'm working on this week. Like
Yep.
how exciting is that?" So that way if I don't deliver on it, like someone knows, and I'm not the type of person who can really like handle that like the guilt of like having told someone I was going to do something and then not being able to deliver on it. Um so that kind of helps to motivate me more to
Hmm.
like really work on something. Um, and in order for me to get to that point, I typically insist that the idea be more fleshed out. Um, Again, kind of like SMART goals. For my game team for Feather Fellows, when we were initially designing the project that we're working on now, um, that was a conversation that started very early because it was based on an idea for like a game we played on a road trip. Um, and like having kind of people in our corner that are almost like kind of expecting this thing to happen has really helped to push us to deliver on it more. But we very, very seriously like limited communication surrounding the project until we really knew like the direction we were headed in. Um, And that's something I do with a lot of my videos too, you know, like if I know that I'm going to like talk about a game, I'm not going to start telling people about that until I have an idea of like what my topic's going to be. Um, and usually I like to have an intro paragraph even still before I'll start like kind of communicating it. So the balance between making promises and setting expectations for your deliverables and also making sure that before you make those promises that the idea is ready, a
Mm.
smart goal.
Yeah. And
Full circle.
I want to call out too to say that what you like the first example you provided that works really well for you. And honestly, I mean, this is something I don't know like the exact term, but I'm sure there's something psychologically associated with this. But what you outlined is actually a method that I know, um, like some people out there around habit forming and stuff is one that is can be very effective, which is basically what you did by reaching out to a friend and letting them know is create accountability. I think specifically it's exterior accountability, right? Because what you mentioned, and this is, I think, a lot of people have difficulty with, and these are from other books I'm not going to share with you right now, or one in particular that I can recall, is people have a really good time at creating or at having exterior accountability, specifically meaning you work at a job and your boss tells you you have to get something done. Well, it's much easier to do that than interior accountability, which is, hey, I'm going to set this goal for myself, or I'm going to work on this project and do it and keep pushing it off. So what you did is you started creating a habit essentially that identified, hey, I'm much better at exterior having tasks and projects that are related to that are associated with exterior accountability, and that's what you did. Probably without even realizing it, or not. Maybe you have, but that's why. So I would say, and everybody's different, right? So I know you were being a little bit modest with saying like take it with a grain of salt, but if you know what type of a person you are, and like I said, most people generally are exterior accountability related, then a method like that could work. I've seen some examples where people will talk to friends too and like, hey, look, like to up the ante, to really push them hard, because let's say to some level it's not the same as, asking a friend or telling a friend about something is not the same as having a boss do it. But if you make a bet with a friend saying, hey, look, I'm going to have this project done, and here's $100. If I don't have it done by this deadline, you're going to keep that $100 or do whatever with the $100, or. So there's other levels of it too. And to kind of take it further with one last resource I would love to share is around the topic of habits and everything is the book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the fact that, wow, there's tons and tons of books written about habits out there. So, like, you know, how is this one different? And the reason why I picked up this book to begin with, because, hey, look, I'm always looking at ways to improve myself. I know Mustafa is too, based off of what he shared with us and everything else that he's been doing. But the reason why I like this book so much is because the approach that James Clear takes with it is not just saying, hey, these are great, effective ways, and this is from all these studies and stuff, because there's lots of different facts and numbers and everything else there about, like, the other people have shared about, like, how to form habits. But he went and he realized that there was a lot of people that weren't talking about the actual science or the human biology component or the mental capacity of it as well. So he decided to look at it from that angle and from obviously the habit forming angle. And what he found was really awesome. But that alone, what's really helpful about this book is while he's teaching you methods on how to create habits, he's also sharing the why, which means here the reason why you should maybe look at it this way or approach it this way is because this is how the human mind reacts. This is what's happening. And if you apply it this way, what you're doing is looking at or doing this from a perspective that's going to kind of hack your mind in a way, right? So nothing like too crazy, but like a simple example here is, let's say you have a bad habit of eating too much popcorn. So once he identified ways to address this, and I've seen these in other books too, of course, but he took the popcorn that he kept eating, or it was some bad snack, I guess, and instead of having it accessible in a cabinet, he put it on the highest shelf he could find in his garage. So he was just eliminating that possibility of him get there, right? So yes, I'm talking about like a bad habit or in junk food in this instance. But the point is, when you take those you take these learnings and the understanding of how your mind works and then start applying it to your own projects and tasks and things like that, you can work out ways to make it much more effective. Like one habit that I have used for, I don't know, I think like 6 or 7 years now, and I love it. And a lot of people might be like, I could never do this, and that's okay if you can't, is I always have my phone on silent every day for 6 years. And the exception I'll make to that is I will turn it on if I'm expecting a phone call. But that's pretty much it. And what I found in that amount of time is it allows me to still form better habits and realize I can like do other things like that to help form better habits, but also limits distractions and everything else. And I, again, so that's just another example. But I just thought it was important to share from a habit perspective of that resource as well too, because like I said, it doesn't just talk about how to form these habits. It also talks about the science and the understanding of how the human mind works, so you can better understand and create habits that are going to be helpful to whatever you're working on. All right, sorry, it was a long-winded thing. I love the book, as you could probably tell, and again, it's very helpful on those respects. So Mustafa, we talked about a lot here. I really love the fact of how I feel like I say this all the time now. the SMART goals and stuff. Anything else you would like to kind of close with from what we learned, and what's a good step? Let's like if we were to take one step forward and how we can be better at self-optimization or just moving forward from everything we learned, what do you think that would be? Just one little tidbit that we got from all of this today.
Right. I think the persisting theme to me is reflection. Everything we've discussed, I feel like is only possible if you have the capacity to really assess yourself, and know how you want to grow and self-optimize and improve. So, reflection, again, just do it as much as you possibly can. As much as you possibly can in a healthy way.
Yes, agreed.
Don't want to start nitpicking everything you do, obviously, but